anytime you are offered an opportunity to do something that takes you a little bit out of your comfort zone, say yes.
Welcome to Friday 5 with Dave Adams. Today I'm speaking with Hank Hubbard, President and CEO of $50 million One Detroit Credit Union. Hank has served there as the credit union's leader since 1991. That's 29 years. He's also on the board of Eastside Community Network, as well as the Detroit CDFI Coalition. Hank is active in the Metro West chapter and serves as chairman of the MCWell Awards Committee. He also serves on the DIF's Credit Union Advisory Council. Hank was the recipient of the 2014 Martha G. Scott Community Leadership Award, as well as the MCWell Distinguished Service Award in 2014. He received the Change Leadership Award by Detroit Rescue Mission Ministries as well. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation because Hank Hubbard and One Detroit Credit Union truly are mission-driven in the way that they provide services to their members and the communities they serve. Well, Hank, welcome to the Friday 5 with Dave Adams. I've been looking forward to having this conversation.
Thanks, Dave. It's really an honor for you to ask after seeing the other people you've talked to. I'm a little outclassed, but we'll see what we can do.
Well, that's a matter of perspective. I think you're very well deserving of this, and you've had a really great career, loyal to your credit union that you're at for 29 years as CEO. Amazing. We often refer to your credit union as a small credit union, but it's a smaller credit union that does big things. That's how I look at it. So I'm looking forward to having our audience learn more about your career journey and other things that we're going to talk about. So again, welcome. So let's go right to it and talk about your career. As I said, 29 years as CEO of One Detroit. How did you get started with credit unions? Maybe talk about your career journey with an emphasis on the credit union part.
Sure. Well, it's kind of a short story. I mean, I graduated with a degree in economics, and right after that, I went to Florida and was an assistant buyer in a department store. Didn't really like that, and I ended up moving to New York City and was a salesperson for a designer there, 2 department stores. And a friend of mine at that point decided to start up a tech company. We were consulting on PCs, actually just around the time that the 5 megabyte hard drive was brought out. And I ended up doing that for several years and running his company until he sold it. And at that point, I was kind of looking around for something else to do. And one of our clients was Communicating Arts Credit Union, which is this One Detroit, old name. We put in the network there, and while I was looking for something else to do, he hired me to upgrade to Windows, all the computers there. So that's dating myself a little bit. And he decided that I should be in credit unions. And I thought that sounded like a fine idea. And what ended up happening is he got himself another job, and he recommended me for mine. So that's how I got in. They wanted somebody with leadership and finance and strategy. They felt they had lending and accounting covered. And there I was at 31, the president of Communicating Arts Credit Union.
What was the credit union's asset size when you took over 29 years ago versus where you're at today?
I think it was probably about 15 to 17 million. We just topped 50 now. So, but we have not really worked hard on growing our assets. We're really trying to work on our impact more.
Now, the credit union was branded Communicating Arts before, as you said, and your field of membership was focused on TV stations and
radio. Yeah, mostly newspaper.
Mm.
people that worked in the newspapers, printing presses and stuff like that. But we also had TV and radio and ink companies
And that industry obviously has gone through incredible change. So the credit union obviously diversified its field of membership and became a community credit union, right?
yeah, well, we were struggling, trying to figure out what to do as our industry was shrinking, the communicating arts industry. And really, I have to credit my board. They really believed in the whole reason credit unions were brought out. You know, some of them still remembered our origination story with the president walking through the plant floor with a box and stuff like that. And they really believed that credit unions are there to provide good financial services to people that are otherwise left out. And
when did that start for you? Because I always think of your credit union as a mission-driven credit union, and Hank Hubbard as a CEO who lives and breathes that. Was there a point in time where that changed, where you became more passionate about that, or has that always been in your DNA?
well, if you're speaking of me, it's always been in my DNA really since I moved back to Detroit. I lived in this wonderfully diverse neighborhood in New York City, and when I came back to Detroit, I was sort of hit in the face on how segregated we are. And so, you know, personally, I had kind of a mission to see if I could blur that line a little bit. And my board was really supportive of that the whole time. And they liked what we were doing there. And, you know, I sort of brought some of the problems of Detroit to the boardroom, and they liked the things that we wanted to do. So, yeah, I clearly had some influence in that shift to working with people in Detroit. But
So when you think about that career journey, that leadership journey, running a smaller credit union at 50 million in assets, what are some of the unique challenges that you see smaller credit unions having? Obviously, we have a high rate of mergers and consolidation. We know that obviously larger institutions have economies of scale, but when you think of credit unions at your size and smaller, what are some of the most challenging things that you have to deal with?
well, I do think that economies of scale come into play, and there is a risk of concentration sometimes. So mostly what we do are smaller loans to people, but we do mortgages, and one mortgage can have a huge impact on us, on our delinquency, or worst comes to worst, a charge off. So there's a lot of ups and downs that you have to kind of live through, and that's kind of a challenge.
Well, speaking of the ups and downs, so leadership lessons as you look back over 29 years and the ups and downs of leading a relatively smaller credit union, what are a couple valuable leadership lessons that you've learned along the way?
Well, I think clear communications are so important, and I believe it's important to put some thought into what you're going to say and clarify your delivery anytime, all the time really, but especially when you're talking to your team or when you want to talk to the media, or if you get an opportunity to speak to a large group. I think it's really important, and I try to do this. I try to think about what I want to say quite a bit before I get there, and then make it sound like it's really casual when I'm talking. I have a pretty casual delivery style, but from a leadership standpoint, I want to be approachable to my team. I want them to just sort of look at me as a person. I think the title sometimes can seem intimidating, And so framing what you want to say in a way that's approachable and understandable is really important. The other thing, I know you said one or two things. That was one thing. The other thing that I find that's really important is networking. And in our industry, especially, it's easy and it's so productive. I was thinking about it today because we were in a Metro West chapter executive committee, and there's people from other levels at other credit unions, and for us to be able to have open conversations on, hey, how are we dealing with remote work, or how are we going to come back and open up, try to get back to normal, and those kinds of conversations, for someone at the highest level of an organization, you don't really have anybody to talk to about a lot of those things, but we do in our industry because of the way we're put together. It's awesome.
Really like your comment about communication. These days, just about everything can be automated, and one of the things that can't be automated is empathy and communication skills. The ability to kind of process and communicate and foster teamwork and be somebody that others want to work with and follow. But for a small credit union, when you think of leadership, you mentioned communication and networking. Are there some things that are unique for leaders of small credit unions? Because obviously you have to be kind of a jack of all trades. You have a small staff. You don't have the luxury of having somebody to delegate everything to. What are some of the things that you think are so important for running a smaller credit union in particular effectively?
Well, as you said, I've spent my whole life with this credit union, basically my whole career. And so I don't have experience in other organizations, but I feel like you have to walk the talk, and you have to really be there. I don't actually run a teller line or anything like that. I've never done that, but I stand back there and I'm supportive of them sometimes. And I think it's really important that they see that that's important to you. I think that my team knows how much they mean to me personally and professionally. And it's really important that they see that, I think.
That's well said. I think that in any organization of any size, for people to want to trust a leader and work with a leader and follow that person, there has to be communication and trust. And I think that's really well said. Now, that kind of feeds into leading a mission-driven credit. We were talking about that earlier. And so the credit union difference is something that we talk about and tout a lot. And as I said a few moments ago, your credit union in particular, and you as the leader of One Detroit, seem to really have a passion for the credit union difference. And maybe you can describe what that means to you and how it plays out at your credit union.
Well, as I sort of mentioned in one of your first questions, part of what really sucked me into our industry is my predecessor sharing with me the people helping people mission. That speaks to me, and you know me well enough to know that speaks very loudly to me. And it does and did to our board then too. And the idea of reaching out and giving a hand to someone who is otherwise left out is really what drives us, me and my board and my leadership team. We provide the same services as other financial institutions, but it's all about the why, and that's what makes the subtle difference. And when we design products, we're trying to make sure that they're inclusive of everybody.
And the saying that what gets measured gets done. How do you measure that? focus on mission?
Well, that's an interesting question, Dave, and it is a really difficult thing. And I think we've all struggled when we're trying to create impact reports, trying to add to the league's annual impact report. How do you measure it? How do you measure it? We have two specialty products that I've been able to measure. One of them is a payday lender alternative that I know you know about. And we're easily able to measure that because we know it's $65 for $500 in Michigan. That's how much it costs. So whatever our product is, it's less. You know, it's actually only 22% of that. So in doing about 10 million of these advances, we've been able to save people $1 million in money that they would have otherwise paid. Same thing with Refi My Ride, which is our product to help people get out of predatory car loans. We know what they were paying in the other loan, so we were able to tell how much we've saved them. So we've saved people almost $5 million in interest over the last.
Those are two great programs, and it strikes me that sometimes the measurements of focusing on mission and extending the credit union to serve people who truly are in need run counter to the CAMEL ratings and the measurements that regulators do, because you can have credit unions obviously that aren't very loaned out or that have no delinquency or very low delinquency who may not be stretching as far as they could. How do you find the right balance? How does One Detroit find that balance, stretching to serve while still maintaining the ratios and the important performance metrics that you need to maintain?
Well, it is a constant struggle. I'll just put that right out there. It's a constant struggle. We push the boundaries all the time, and sometimes it doesn't work out so great for us. We have strong capital, which allows us to take these chances. We've also been very successful with CDFI fund grants. We were the first credit union in Michigan to earn a grant, and I think we still are the one that have earned the most. And those things, so for example, the Refi My Ride program, we received $1 million from the CDFI fund to do community development work, and this is what we chose to do. A program that was really kind of scary to us at first. Why are we taking on these loans that seemingly are bad? They're D&E paper mostly, and high loan to value. It was the grant that allowed us, it basically gave us the courage to take that step. And it actually has been a very good program for us.
I've heard it said, and I'm sure you have as well, that having a CAMEL 1 isn't necessarily a badge of honor if it forces you to be so conservative that you're unable to take those necessary risks. Yeah. It is a balancing act, and I think it's particularly challenging during these times. So that's what I wanted to segue to the next question. So heading into another tough economic cycle, which we've been through many in Michigan, and during your 29 years, I'm sure you could point to 3 or 4 pretty significant cycles you've had to work through. But with the COVID-driven economy, the recession that we're in right now, at one point, Detroit's unemployment led the nation at 24% during this crisis. And I think it's well down to around 8 to 10% now. But what's different in the way you're approaching your service to your members, the way you underwrite loans, the way you stretch to help people in Detroit right now during this tough economic time?
Well, I wouldn't say that we have dramatically changed the way we underwrite loans. We we're looking for a source of income, or we're looking for a source of future income. And so if we know somebody's laid off in a stable industry otherwise, we take those things into account. But I think that we do that anyway. I think more operationally is what's changed for us. We've slimmed our staff down. So fortunate that these government subsidies made it easy for the people we had to lay off financially. And we are starting to bring them all back now. So that's working out well, but it also helped us weather the storm. It's also taught us that remote working is so much more viable than I had given it credit for in the past, I know. And so we're working on that, trying to keep a team atmosphere while we have remote work. We are working on just putting more emphasis even on things like remote delivery, which we were working on, but now we've accelerated it considerably. And those are the kinds of things that we're doing.
How has the conversation changed? How is it different with your staff and with your board right now? How you're approaching things in terms of your planning and your budgeting?
It is different because we felt secure that we knew pretty much what was going to happen. Last year, for example, we had all these plans that we just for everybody has changed quite a bit. And so this year we're putting together our planning session and we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're mostly remote working through the end of the year.
I think in a word, I think it's not true just for credit unions and financial institutions, but for all businesses. Uncertainty is the word of the day. Yeah. We don't know when the vaccine will be broadly available. We don't know if we'll see another big spike or two. We don't know the implications for the economy. And so I think for credit unions, just like most other businesses, it's, work on what you can control and kind of plan for a worse scenario than we're in. Let's wrap up with something more cheery, and that is your personal loves and passions. What does Hank Hubbard enjoy doing when he's not working 10 hours a day at the credit union?
Well, I am sort of a funny guy that way. I focus on something pretty hard for short periods of time. So as my kids were growing up, I tried to learn how to play guitar, which is why I appreciate what you do, your COVID. Anyway, I learned I was better at listening, and I did spend a lot of time working, going out and checking out live music in Detroit. I like to do stuff with my hands, so I have had a period of metalworking where I took classes and did a bunch of stuff. Woodworking has been lately, but most recently, there's this little silver lining with the COVID pandemic, and that is, I've been able to spend a lot of the time remote working at our cottage. As you can sort of see, I'm in a cabin kind of thing. And my daughters, who are successful, 29 and 31, they have been able to work remotely. And so we have seen a lot of them. My daughter, who's marketing director for a large credit union in Denver, is here right now.
That's great.
She's working right now in the other room. And, it's kind of crazy, but it's nice. It's really been nice for us.
That's something that we hear a lot. The one big silver lining with COVID is the opportunity to spend more time and more quality time with family. But as we look to come out of this challenging time, if you had one word of advice for your credit union leaders who you're networking with, what would that one piece of advice be for getting through this crisis?
Hang on. We're going to make it through it. We are.
I love that.
We're
Again,
all,
I threw that zinger at you and you didn't know that was coming, but that is great advice. Hang on, we're going to get through it. Stay positive. And it kind of ties into what you said a moment ago when in your boardroom, when you're with your staff. You don't have all the answers. We don't have all the answers. We don't know what's coming around the bend, but I think hang on and just know that trust in ourselves that we'll get through it. So Hank, one more question. As you mentor your staff or you advise future leaders or people who want to advance their careers, what would that advice be?
say yes would be my advice. Anytime you are offered an opportunity to do something that takes you a little bit out of your comfort zone, say yes and do it. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you will get being slightly out of your comfort zone.
That's
I
great.
had that opportunity with you a long time ago. You asked me to go to Macedonia. I was like, where's Macedonia? But yes, and I went, and you learn so much with those kinds of experiences. And since then, I've been on World Council trips to Africa. I've represented U.S. credit unions in England, and I've done all kinds of cool stuff. And every time you get to do it, it gives you a little bit more strength.
That's great. That's such great advice. And we've all been on maybe the giving and the receiving end of saying yes or saying no. And as a leader, when you have people who are unwilling to accept a challenge, it affects the way you look at them for future opportunities. And likewise for us, because I've been guilty of saying no as well. Really, you miss so many opportunities when you fail to take a little risk, take a chance like that. Well, Hank Hubbard, CEO of One Detroit Credit Union, thanks for sharing your story. And I'm sure that everybody would agree that knowing you and knowing what your credit union accomplishes in Detroit for your members and your focus on mission and doing everything you can to live the credit union difference, it's very impressive. So thank you for sharing that story with us today.
Thanks, Dave. Good talking to you.
Well, I really enjoyed that conversation with Hank Hubbard, CEO of One Detroit Credit Union. Hank helped us understand that communication, good communication, authentic, transparent communication, as well as networking are two critical leadership traits in these times, running a credit union during tough economic times where there's so many pressures on the key performance metrics for credit unions. He also talked about the importance in mentoring staff and emerging leaders, the importance of saying yes when presented opportunities. That would be the one piece of advice that he would give to people who are looking to further their careers. Our thanks goes out to Hank Hubbard again for a great discussion, and we look forward to future episodes of Friday 5 with Dave Adams. If you're interested in being on the podcast, please let us know.